The man who arrived to destroy her family was the same man who would one day kneel before her and offer her his name. But neither of them knew that yet. The town of Red Hollow certainly did not. On the morning Duke Alexander Blackwood rode into town, people closed their doors. Curtains moved, whispers spread, children were pulled inside, because everyone knew why he had come. The Whitmore Ranch was drowning in debt. The bank had finally sold the debt to a wealthy Eastern investor. A ruthless man. A man who collected land the way hunters collected trophies. That man was Duke Alexander Blackwood, and he intended to claim everything, including the Whitmore Ranch. Clara Whitmore stood on the porch of the weathered ranch house when she first saw him. Tall, broad, shouldered, dressed in black. His horse moved through the dust like something out of a nightmare. Beside her, her father coughed violently into a handkerchief. The sickness had stolen most of his strength. The ranch was all he had left, and now even that was slipping away. He can't take this place, her father whispered. Clara squeezed his arm. We'll find a way. But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. The ranch accounts were empty. The cattle numbers were falling. The drought had destroyed nearly everything. Then Alexander dismounted. His boots touched the dirt. And the future changed. He approached the porch calmly. No anger. No cruelty. No smile. Only certainty. Mr. Whitmore. Her father straightened. You've come for your money. I've come for what legally belongs to me. The words landed like bullets. Clara stepped forward immediately. You'll have your money. Alexander's eyes shifted toward her for the first time. The look lasted only a second, but somehow it felt longer. You have 30 days? She asked. No. 20? No. Her jaw tightened. Then why are you here? Alexander unfolded a document. The ranch becomes mine tomorrow. Silence. Her father looked as if someone had punched him. Clara felt her stomach drop. Tomorrow. Not next month. Not next week. Tomorrow. After years of work. Years of sacrifice. Everything would disappear. Her father staggered. Clara caught him before he fell. Alexander watched. Expressionless. Yet something strange flickered behind his eyes. For a brief moment, almost regret. Then it vanished. That night, Clara sat alone beside the barn. The moon hung over the prairie. The cattle slept quietly. She listened to the familiar sounds she had known her entire life. Tomorrow they would belong to someone else. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not yet. She had spent years helping her father survive. Years fighting droughts, floods, disease. Bandits. And now one wealthy stranger would erase it all. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She looked up. Alexander stood several feet away. Alone. No guards. Just him. What do you want? She asked coldly. He glanced toward the ranch. You built much of this yourself. It wasn't a question. She frowned. How would you know? I asked around town. Clara laughed bitterly. So now you're studying the people you're ruining? His jaw tightened slightly. You think this pleases me, doesn't it? Silence. The wind moved between them. Finally Alexander spoke. My father destroyed families. Clara blinked. The answer surprised her. He taught me that mercy creates weakness. Then he would be proud of you. The words cut deeper than she intended. Alexander looked away. For the first time, he seemed human. Not a duke, not a wealthy businessman, just a man carrying old scars. Then he turned. Without another word, and disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, the entire town gathered. Everyone came. Nobody wanted to miss the fall of the Whitmores. Clara stood beside her father inside the courthouse. The papers waited. The signatures waited. And waited. Then something happened that nobody expected. Alexander Blackwood walked into the room carrying a second document, and the moment Clara saw his face, she knew something had changed. The courthouse fell silent. Alexander placed the new document beside the original papers. The lawyer frowned. "What is this?" Alexander looked directly at Clara's father. "A proposal." Confusion spread through the room. The banker blinked. "A proposal?" Alexander nodded. "The debt remains." Everyone already knew that. The ranch remains operational. Nobody understood. Then Alexander spoke the words that changed everything. "I will postpone collection indefinitely." Gasps filled the room. Clara stared at him, certain she had heard wrong. Her father looked equally shocked. Banker nearly dropped his glasses. "But why?" he asked. Alexander's answer came slowly. "Because some things are worth more than money." Nobody believed him. Least of all Clara Dot. She followed him outside. Immediately after the meeting, "What game are you playing?" Alexander stopped walking. "No game. You were ready to take everything yesterday. I know. And today you're suddenly generous?" His eyes met hers. "You think people can't change?" "I think wealthy men rarely do." For a moment she thought he might get angry. Instead, he smiled slightly. The first smile. She had seen Dot. It disappeared quickly, but it changed. Him Dot somehow Dot over the next several weeks. Alexander remained in Red Hollow. Nobody understood why. Ranch no longer belonged to him. The debt wasn't being collected. His business elsewhere demanded attention. Yet, he stayed Dot at first. Clara assumed he was waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. But gradually, she noticed things. He repaired fences himself, helped ranch hands during storms, paid medical bills for workers injured on neighboring properties. Dot never told anyone. Never asked for gratitude. Dot, he simply did it. The townspeople slowly softened toward him. Clara fought the change. She reminded herself who he was, why he came, what he represented. Yet every time she expected cruelty, she found kindness instead. One evening a thunderstorm trapped them together inside a supply. Shed-out rain hammered the roof. Lightning flashed outside. The space felt suddenly very small. Alexander sat quietly across from her. Finally, Clara broke the silence. "Why did you really stay?" His expression darkened. For several seconds he didn't answer. Then he spoke. "My younger sister died because my father cared more about money than people." Clara listened carefully. She was sick. His voice grew rough. He refused treatment because it wasn't profitable. Pain filled every word. The kind of pain that never truly leaves. "After she died," he continued, "I promised myself I would never become him." Clara's anger softened. Only slightly, but enough. Came close. A sad smile appeared. "Closer than I'd like." The storm continued. The silence returned. Yet this silence felt different. Comfortable. Dangerous. Neither wanted to admit it. Months passed. The ranch slowly recovered. The drought eased. Cattle numbers improved. Hope returned. And somewhere during those months, Clara stopped seeing Alexander as the enemy. She saw the lonely man beneath the title, the wounded soul beneath the wealth. Then came the night. Everything fell apart. A rider arrived after midnight, covered in dust. Exhausted. Carrying a message. "Alexander." Read it once, then his face turned pale. "What is it?" Clara asked. He folded the paper slowly. "My father." Fear settled in his eyes. The kind of fear no strong man can hide. "What happened?" Alexander looked at her. Then spoke words that froze her blood. He's coming here. Lord Henry Blackwood arrived 3 days later, and from the moment he stepped off the train, everyone understood why Alexander feared him. The old man radiated coldness, not anger, not cruelty. Something worse, complete indifference. People were numbers. Land was profit, lives were assets, nothing more. He looked at Red Hollow as if examining livestock, and his eyes found Clara, and lingered too long, too carefully. Alexander immediately stepped between them. Subtle movement. Yet Clara noticed so did Lord Blackwood. Interesting, very interesting. The old man smiled. The sight was unsettling. That evening he joined the Whitmores for dinner. Nobody enjoyed a single bite. Conversation felt like walking through a minefield. Then Lord Blackwood finally revealed his purpose. The debt should have been collected months ago. Silence. Alexander set down his fork. I made that decision. You made a foolish decision. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Clara's father looked nervous. Alexander remained calm. The ranch survives because of it. I don't care if the ranch survives. The words hit like a slap. Lord Blackwood turned toward Clara. I care about results. Her hands clenched beneath the table. The old man smiled again, then delivered the true blow. The debt will be collected immediately. Her father's face lost all color. Alexander stood. No. The single word echoed through the room. His father looked amused. You forget who built your fortune. I remember exactly. The two men stared at each other. Years of resentment, years of pain, years of disappointment. Everything suddenly visible. Then Lord Blackwood leaned forward. If you refuse, I remove you from the company. Clara's heart stopped. Everything Alexander owned depended on that company. Everything. The old man knew it. That was why he smiled. Alexander didn't answer. Immediately, he looked toward Clara, then her father, and the ranch beyond the window. Finally he spoke. Do it. A smile vanished from Lord Blackwood's face. For the first time ever, Alexander had chosen not wealth, not power, people. The next morning the old man left. But before boarding the train, he delivered one final warning. You'll regret this. Then he was gone. For a while, life seemed peaceful again. Until Clara discovered something hidden among old financial records. Something impossible. Something terrifying. The original debt. Documents. She examined them repeatedly, certain she had made a mistake. But the numbers didn't lie. The debt had never belonged to Alexander. It belonged to his father all along, from the very beginning. Shock turned into confusion. Confusion became suspicion, and suspicion became fear, because if Lord Blackwood had owned the debt the entire time, then Alexander had known far more than he admitted. That night Clara confronted him. The papers trembled in her hands. Tell me the truth. Alexander looked at the documents. His face went white, and Clara knew immediately. He had been hiding something. The silence between them felt unbearable. Alexander stared at the papers. At the evidence. At the secret he could no longer hide. Finally he closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Clara felt her heart crack, not because he admitted, because part of her had already begun trusting him. What? Aren't you telling me? Alexander's voice barely rose above a whisper. My father targeted your family years ago. The world seemed to tilt. What? He wanted this land. The words kept coming. Relentless. Painful. Necessary. Railroad expansion plans passed directly through this valley. Clara stared at him, unable to breathe. Ranch was never about debt. No. It was about stealing our land. Yes. Tears filled her eyes. Every sacrifice, every struggle, every hardship. Planned. Engineered. Designed. Her. Father had never stood a chance. Alexander looked devastated. I found out after I inherited part of the company. And you said nothing? I was trying to stop it. Her laugh sounded broken. You should have told me. I know. You should have trusted. Emmy, I know. The worst part was hearing genuine regret in his voice, because it would have been easier if he were lying, easier if he were cruel, easier if she hated him instead. She still loved him, and that made everything hurt more. Following days were miserable. Clara avoided him. Alexander respected the distance. The town sensed tension, but knew nothing. Then, tragedy struck. Her father collapsed. Inside the barn, the doctor arrived quickly. Too quickly, because everyone already feared this day. The sickness had spread. There was nothing left to do. 3 days later, Thomas Whitmore died peacefully at home. Half the town attended the funeral. Clara stood alone afterward, beside the grave. Numb, exhausted, broken. The wind moved softly across the prairie. She felt someone approach. Alexander. Of course. He stopped beside her. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Clara finally whispered, I don't know how to do this without him. Alexander looked toward the horizon. Neither do I. She frowned. My father isn't the only one gone. His voice cracked slightly. The company removed me yesterday. She turned toward him. Shock replacing grief. What? They chose my father. Everything he had. Built. Gone. Everything he sacrificed. Gone. And suddenly Clara understood. He had truly given up everything. Not for profit. Not for advantage. For her. For her family. For what was right. The realization hit harder than any confession. Then Alexander reached into his coat and removed a small velvet box. Clara stared. Confused. He opened it. Inside rested a simple ring. No diamonds. No grand display. Just honesty. Just hope. Just love. Then he said the words she never expected. I came here to destroy your family. Tears streamed down her face. And now? His eyes shone with emotion. Now I want to build one with you. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't move, because before she could answer, a gunshot shattered the silence. Alexander shoved Clara to the ground. Another shot rang out. Dirt exploded. Nearby, panic spread across the cemetery. People screamed. Ran. Scattered. Alexander pulled Clara behind a stone monument. The shooter stood near the trees. A hired gun. One of Lord Blackwood's men. The message was clear. If Alexander would not obey, he would be removed. The gunman fired again. Then ranch hands arrived from town. The shooter fled, disappearing into the hills. By nightfall, the threat was gone, but the truth remained. Lord Blackwood had crossed a line, and finally, Red Hollow had enough. The townspeople gathered evidence. Witnesses came forward. Former employees testified. Business records surfaced. Years of corruption emerged. For decades, people had feared the Blackwood empire. Now they fought back. Together. The investigation lasted months. Lord Blackwood's influence collapsed piece by piece. Lawsuits followed. Criminal charges followed. Everything he built through greed began crumbling. And for the first time in his life, money couldn't save him. Meanwhile, life slowly healed. Not perfectly. Never perfectly, but enough. Clara learned to manage the ranch alone, though she wasn't truly alone. Alexander remained beside her every step, not as a savior, not as a duke, as a partner, as a man who had earned trust the hard way. One sunrise, they stood together overlooking the valley, the same valley people had tried to steal, the same valley her father loved, the same valley that nearly destroyed them both. It's beautiful, Alexander said. Clara smiled. He would have liked seeing this. He would have been proud of you. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of loss. They were tears of gratitude. Months later, the church in Red Hollow overflowed with people. Every seat occupied, every window crowded. The entire town attended. Not because a duke was getting married, because two people who had survived impossible odds were finally finding happiness. When Clara walked down the aisle, Alexander looked exactly as he had the first day she saw him. Strong, determined, unshakable, except now his eyes held warmth. Love, home. When she reached him, he whispered softly, "You still haven't answered my proposal." She laughed through tears. The church laughed with her. Then she took his hands and finally gave the answer, yes. The single word carried months of pain, years of struggle, a lifetime of hope. After the ceremony, they rode together across the prairie, the sun setting behind them, the future waiting ahead. No titles mattered anymore. No fortunes. No debts. No empires. Only two hearts that had chosen each other. As the ranch disappeared behind them, Clara looked back one final time. The land remained standing. Her father's dream survived. The family name survived. And somehow, through the man sent to destroy everything, love had survived too. Alexander reached for her hand. She squeezed it gently. Neither spoke. They didn't need to, because some promises are stronger than words, and some love stories begin exactly where they were supposed to end.